Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I have a really exciting video for you guys today and we're going to be talking about communication. And I've done a couple of these videos before, but I wanted to go not only in detail about some of the things that I often talk about, but introduce some new topics which I think you guys will find useful. Before I get into today's video, I just wanted to announce that spots for my one-to-one are opening up. So if you'd like to schedule that free consult, I'll leave that link down below and you can get in on that. Also, I just want to make sure that you guys stay tuned for the end of the video because I'm going to be giving something away that will be on this topic. So make sure you stick around for that. Okay, so with that being said, let's get into the video. So I have 6 topics lined up for you guys. I'm not even sure you can see them that clearly. I hope you can see them. But I'm going to be talking about them anyway, so it really doesn't matter. I just want to have a clear path for you guys. So the first topic is going to be about listening. And I think listening is really important for communication because how can you communicate with someone if you're not listening to what they have to say? And if you know me and if you watch my videos, you know that I talk about listening all the time on this channel. And I talk about the way we have to listen, right? So oftentimes when we communicate to our child or, we think we're listening to them, we're really not. We're not looking at them in the eye. We're not getting down to their level. We're not hearing what they have to say clearly. And oftentimes that's frustrating for them. And, they don't feel validated. They don't feel like their opinions are being acknowledged. And so that can in turn affect their behavior. You can see meltdowns occur from that. You can see tantrums, you can see like aggression and all sorts of things that happen when you don't listen clearly. So I think the best way to listen is, again, getting down to their level. Asking questions, saying things like, tell me more, like I see, like let's talk about this more. Just saying things so that it'll help them open up more clearly. I just wanted to throw that part in there and introduce it first because it's something I've talked about and you guys can, go rewatch those videos where I go in depth about it and I'll leave them linked down below if you want to go take a look at those. So the second topic is another thing that I've talked about, but we're going to go into detail on it, and that's picking up on emotion. So I have just emotion listed here, but I think that's just as effective. So picking up on emotion is oftentimes looking at more than just the behavior, looking at the body language, looking at the facial expressions, looking at small things that are going to tell you what they're feeling. Right? Sometimes, especially for younger kids and even, school-age kids and teenagers, you kind of have to read between the lines as to what they're thinking and to what they're feeling on the inside. And once you get a better sense of what they're feeling, you can then manage that from there. You can take apart the situation, you can address the situation, you can do things that you need to do in order to move forward and stop, something bad from happening, I guess you could say. The third thing is obviously acknowledging that feeling. So it's one thing to pick up on that emotion and to address that emotion, but it's another thing to feel validated. But it's another thing to validate that emotion. So I think a perfect example of that is, say you're in a situation where you yourself are feeling very angry, like you're pissed off and you want to feel heard. You want to, go tell this to someone. You want to just let it off your chest. How would you feel if someone said to you, you're fine, you're not angry, you're fine. You'll be fine. That's how kids feel when you tell them that they're fine if they're feeling angry or frustrated. They don't want to hear that they're fine because they're not fine. And oftentimes these negative emotions like anger, sadness, or frustration are often just brushed off and not fully addressed. And that's why you see these behaviors such as aggression happening over and over again because these feelings aren't being validated. They're just being brushed off. They're not fine. You have to address that they're angry. So they have to have those feelings validated in order to move forward. You have to say, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry. I feel angry too sometimes. Let's address this together. Let's find a solution that's going to help you. Let's do something so that you can release this anger. I get that you're feeling angry. Let's release this anger. Let's go draw. Let's go punch a pillow. Let's go do something that will help you get rid of this anger. And I think punching a pillow is the perfect thing to do for a child that's like maybe a little bit younger and you don't want them to throw a tantrum or something. Like punching a pillow is just a great way to get their anger out. And even myself, sometimes when I'm feeling angry, like at this point in my life, I can go for a walk. But if I'm feeling really angry, like sometimes I just like to kickbox or do something that just lets that steam out. And it's okay to have that kind of aggression as a child as long as they're not doing it in a destructive way. But you have to release that anger somehow. So doing it in productive ways or helpful ways that are not going to put them in danger or put someone else in danger. So finding things like that, if it's drawing, if it's punching the pillow, if it's writing about it, if it's go running outside, something that can help them really feel into that emotion. But again, you do have to validate it. So the fourth thing is delaying correction. And by that I mean trying not to or resisting to correct them when they're doing something wrong. And oftentimes when we do this, the child again feels very frustrated, and that can lead to anger or some other kind of emotion. But it's really hard not to correct them immediately, even if you know that it's the wrong thing. Sometimes we just have to hear them out. Sometimes we just have to let them say their side of the story, so to speak. We just have to get into their heads and help them feel acknowledged and validated in this side of the story that they're telling. And just by doing this, they'll get a better sense of the situation at hand, because you're going to be asking them questions that are going to lead them to finding out what really happened. But it helps to gain a perspective on their side of the story. And that's the fifth thing that I wanted to introduce, which was perspective. And if you guys know me, again, I always talk about getting a new perspective or trying to get it from their perspective, because once you see things from their side or their point of view, it's often helpful. And it really just helps you get a better sense of what they might be thinking and what they might be feeling in this situation. And if you can get into their shoes, you can oftentimes, say like, that's a great point. I see what you were thinking there. I see that you may have been frustrated by that. I see why you're angry now. That totally makes sense. Saying things like that will help them feel acknowledged and heard, even if it's the wrong thing. And then once you guys both acknowledge that it's the wrong thing, or if you acknowledge that it's the wrong thing, you can address the situation. You can maybe find a solution. And just by doing that, they'll be able to feel a little bit more comfortable. They'll be able to feel heard and maybe less frustrated just instantaneously when you actually try to get down to the root of the problem, and when you ask those questions that are going to help them feel heard. So this next topic is by far my favorite, and I think is going to be the most effective and most eye-opening. So if you've watched my videos before, you know I've talked about Brené Brown, and she is a researcher who studies shame, guilt, vulnerability, empathy, things like that. And she's just awesome. She's been doing this for 2 decades, and the stuff that she has to say is just so eye-opening. And so I found this topic while listening to her podcast, Unlocking Us. I highly recommend listening to that. I always talk about how I listen to podcasts when I'm in the car or when I'm, doing things around my apartment. But I like to listen to that kind of like motivational speaking. But sometimes she'll just talk about a subject on the podcast, or she'll bring someone in, like an author, a doctor, a researcher, and even an actress, and she'll just talk about a topic with them. But the topic that she was talking about was shame-prone versus guilt-prone. And so the way she describes it is, well, first she breaks down what shame and what guilt is, because there are 2 very different things. So shaming is focusing on self, while guilt is focused on behavior. And I think that's a very important distinction between the 2. Because sometimes even myself, when I'm talking about myself, and I make a mistake, I'm so stupid. Or, I'm such an idiot for doing this. Instead of saying that was an idiotic thing for me to do, or that was a stupid thing for me to do. And it really hurts the psyche. And it hurts a child's psyche if you were to say, why are you so bad? Or why are you so lazy? Or why... any kind of thing that actually focus on them rather than on their behavior. And it's very important to make this distinction, because shaming rather than guilting has been highly correlated to things like depression, aggression, anxiety, suicide, eating disorders, and there's so much more. And Brené Brown actually says that guilt is inversely correlated with all of those things, because the way she describes it, and I'm going to read a direct quote from her, it's the ability to hold something we've done or failed to do up against who we want to be is adaptive. So the fact that we can make that distinction of behavior versus self, the way that we want to change that behavior is adaptive. It helps us move forward. It helps motivates us. So if we can make that distinction, and if we can stop saying those things like "you are" instead of "that behavior was," it's so effective. And again, it goes along with communication, because these are things that we communicate on the daily. You know, when we find that our kids aren't doing their homework, or they're not doing their chores, they're not doing something that they should be doing, we label them as a person of blank instead of saying that their behavior is that. So oftentimes when that happens, when we label them as a person, they get into the mindset that they are that person, instead of, this is just my behavior and I can change my behavior. I can't change who I am, but I can change my behavior. So making that little change and that little adjustment is really going to help make things more fluid. And again, it's going to help their self-esteem. It's going to probably change their behaviors, help motivate them a little bit more, and focusing on that behavior rather than that self is super important. And that's why I say that as the last topic, because again, I think it is going to be the most effective and the most eye-opening in a relationship to communication. So just to recap, the things that we focused on today were listening, picking up on those emotions, acknowledging the emotions, delaying correction, looking at their perspective, and then again, avoiding shame. So for those who stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to be linking that free PDF that I mentioned in the beginning of this video. So make sure you get your hands on that. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. I hope you found it useful as always, and I'll see you next time.